Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome you to episode number 89 of the Primetime Rundown, presented to you by Black Cats NYC right here on the Eastern Observer alongside my man Mike Szabo. I'm Joey Jarzynka. Our good friend Ian Schraier is out due to an extended assignment break, so he will be back with us indefinitely in the next couple of weeks, we do hope. But Mike Szabo, good to see you, my good man. How are you?
Doing well on the eve of my big Nashville trip coming up tomorrow. Going away for the next couple of days, so that'll be real good. I've been really looking forward to see Nashville, a city I've been interested in. So it should be a good family trip.
Well, there you go. I can tell you this, in a couple of days for myself, it will be Atlantic City for a couple of days. So it'll be, some green, some less green when we do come back on Friday morning. So at least the two of us, following, of course, episode number 89, we will be enjoying ourselves to the best of our ability. Well, ladies and gentlemen, of course, we do always want to start off with our good friends from Black Cats NYC. Be sure to download their newest album called Free Cake, which is out now. Play loud on the following platforms: Apple Music, Deezer, YouTube, SoundCloud, Amazon Music, YouTube Music, Pandora, and Spotify. Well, Mike, we've got a fantastic show upcoming here. Of course, yesterday we got a chance to see the Colorado Avalanche obtain its third Stanley Cup championship yesterday against the Tampa Bay Lightning. Their two-time Stanley Cup championship tenure was officially broken yesterday. And what we got a chance to see yesterday was the Colorado Avalanche not only put on a clinic against this Tampa Bay Lightning team, but it was... what's the best word to put it, Mike? I think it was just pure domination after a while.
Oh, it was a fantastic closeout performance, especially late on. I think up until Tampa Bay had the empty net late on, it was only 2 shots on goal in the period that the Lightning had. Just an unbelievable defensive performance and a closeout game on the road for Colorado. You're feeling pressure. It's 3-2. They're trying to send it back to a Game 7, back to Colorado. And just an unbelievable performance defensively, and being able. Kemper was sharp, but especially the later the game got, Colorado really locked down defensively and prevented a lot of serious work that he had to do.
They tallied their third Stanley Cup championship in franchise history: 1996, 2001, and now 2022. Yesterday, we got a chance to see Artturi Lehkonen score that game-winning goal. And, of course, he will be a restricted free agent starting on July 13th. He will also be arbitration eligible. And, of course, Artturi Lehkonen, he fit in like a glove with Nathan MacKinnon and Gabriel Landeskog. They played absolutely lights out day in and day out, or rather playoff game day in and day out, if you will. They traded him to, or rather they got him from Montreal, a 2020 draft pick, Justin Barron, a left-handed defenseman, and a 2024 second-round draft pick is what Joe Sakic sent Ken Hughes and the Montreal Canadiens. And as we do know that Jack Johnson, Rangers legend Jack Johnson, Eric Johnson as well, those two guys, including, of course, Andrew Cogliano, Darren Helm, a few other guys on this roster, they were pretty much just, little fill-ins there. And the reason why we bring that up with Jack Johnson and mainly him on the defensive side of things, because Samuel Girard had a broken sternum, and obviously, he will not be a part of the team next year, but Samuel Girard's spot is obviously safe. But talk about a fantastic job filling in for the injured Girard. And not only that, too, but really the entire defensive core for this Colorado Avalanche team. I mean, look at Cale Makar. I mean, he won the Norris Trophy, and then he won the Conn Smythe. Became the third defenseman in NHL history to win both in the same season, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, just the defense starting off with Makar and Taves. I mean, just a fantastic pairing alone, and everybody else followed them up and did what they needed to do to close out. It's unbelievably fantastic performance, and probably one of the more dominant postseason campaigns we've seen in recent years. Colorado only lost, I believe, 4 times this entire playoffs?
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. I think they said this morning a plus 30 goal difference. The Nets' best team in the playoffs was a plus 6. I mean, this was just one of the most dominant postseason runs we've seen in the last couple of years in the NHL.
Yeah, I mean, you look at some of these statistics here, Mike, and after Steven Stamkos scored the first goal yesterday, a lot of folks had said on social media that, well, whenever Steven Stamkos scores at Amalie Arena this season or this postseason, they're 6-0. And yesterday, obviously, with 2 goals by Colorado, Cale Makar sets up Nathan MacKinnon for the one-timer on the left dot. And then following Arturi Lehkonen with the game-winning goal, he's now 6-1. As we did say,
great streaks come to an end at a bad time, as I always say.
Yeah, you ain't kidding. And in addition to with obviously we brought up how Cale Makar, he won the Conn Smythe, 6th defenseman in NHL history to be the outright playoff scoring leader for a Stanley Cup champion. He became also the 3rd defenseman to win the Conn Smythe and the Norris Trophy in the exact same season. And of course, as this graphic also says, the youngest defenseman to win since Bobby Orr 52 years ago. Now, to have Cale Makar in the same sentence and in the same trophy presentation and in the same breath as a legend, it's truly remarkable. A couple of years ago, he was the Hobey Baker Award winner, which was the top player in all of college hockey. Keep in mind, too, just a few years ago, Mike, they went 22. We have to get you that number here. 22, 56, and 4 with 48 points, 2016, 2017. Mike was only 4 years old at that time. Patrick Waugh quit in the preseason. That's the craziest part about it. Jared Bednar comes in. Joe Sakic gives this man a chance to come in and build something from the ground up. I remember for many seasons after, and keep in mind that was only 5-6 years ago, give or take, 5 or 6 seasons ago. They wanted Sakic's head on a platter. The Mile High City was absolutely furious with what was going on. They lost a playoff round. They lost in the first round. They lost in the second round. They lost in the first round again. Then they lost in the second round again. How much losing can you do? 21 years later, one of the greatest players in Colorado Avalanche history. Now, keep in mind, of course, the Quebec Nordiques, they moved to Colorado. So in the same exact franchise, Joe Sakic, one of the greatest players of all time for starters, and then also the greatest player in franchise history, becomes the 3rd general manager to lift the Stanley Cup as a player and now a general manager. Now, you want to talk about something cool, Mike Szabo? How cool is that? Where he literally constructed this team from the bottom up. He uprooted everything that Colorado had. And I'm sure you remember this. Tiny bits, I'm sure. They wanted Landeskog's head on a platter because they didn't think that he would take a hometown discount a couple of years back. They didn't know how Nathan MacKinnon would fare if he would jump ship in a couple of years. Now, he's due for a contract. And he's due for a contract next season, but is eligible in a couple of weeks on July 13th. The draft is only next week. There's a lot of things to be had for this team in the future. I personally believe, Mike, that this could be, not will be, could be, the start of what Tampa Bay had done a couple of years ago. Do you agree?
I think it could be. I think they have a great young core in place. I think it's been said a lot, but certainly Makar has had a massive impact on this franchise since he's been drafted. and come in. I think really solidified what they were already building. They have a young enough core, as long as they keep it all relatively together. McKinnon, when he's due for a contract and whatnot, they're still all relatively young enough that they can go on a bit of a run. This was an incredibly deep team this year, and I think they'll still be pretty strong on depth next year as well. It's kind of strange to say, okay, they've won one, and we'll start playing the dynasty game or whatnot. But I mean, the pieces are there, the age, all the boxes that you need to tick for trying to look out for potential dynasty are there.
Yeah, and when you look at some of the numbers as well, this team is fairly young. They had the perfect veterans to come in. The Coglianos, the Darren Helms of the world, the Jack Johnsons of the world, who came in at the perfect time. You also had some guys that did not get dressed, some youngsters who are still technically tendered or will be tendered. Their rights are owned by the franchise. Arturi Lehkonen, Aube Kubel, who slotted in at times when Kadri was hurt. Burakovsky is a free agent. This team has $26 million in money to spend. They have to spend at least $4 million to get to the cap floor. I don't think that'll be a problem because a lot of players are going to be due for a payday. And obviously, what happens with Nathan McKinnon, which probably won't happen right away, but it very well could, especially now he just won the Stanley Cup. Will he take a discount? I don't think so. I personally believe that it will not be the number that a lot of folks had thought at one point that he would be getting, which was in the $10-11 million range. I don't think he'll be, I think he will maybe ask for that, but I don't expect that to be. I think that with the core that they've got now, you're going to see this dynasty build. And exactly what we heard, and Mike, I'm sure you heard this yesterday, when Emily Kaplan of ABC and ESPN asked the captain, Gabe Landeskog, about Cale Makar and what other teams need to do to try and replicate the performance that they did. Quote, you have to find yourselves a Cale Makar. This man, Mike, is pretty much like a diamond in the rough that they got. It's unbelievable.
Well, the quote about for a franchise to do what Colorado's doing, you got to find yourself a Cale Makar. Good luck with that one. Those don't come. Those kind of players don't come easily. We've seen the comparisons, whether it's now the stats with his accomplishments or the comparisons beforehand to Bobby Orr and whatnot. These kind of players like Makar don't come often. So that's certainly a lot easier said than done. But they've just really operated really smartly, the front office. They put a plan together. They've trusted it. They've drafted well. They've inserted the right veterans that they needed to mix with the young players. And they've managed the cap well. That's going to set up for a lot of long-term success.
I could tell you this. There's another statistic here that I know that our good friend Rob DeLuca is not going to like. Because the last time that something like this happened, 16-4. 4 losses for the Colorado Avalanche. The last time that happened, the fewest losses, and then they become the Stanley Cup champion. The last time that happened was the 2012 Los Angeles Kings. Now, of course, Mike, we know that LA Kings team was historically good on the road.
Mm-hmm.
They absolutely dominated the Devils in the Cup final.
Yep.
Sure, they won in 5. But then you also look at the Devils, 1995. Colorado became just the 9th team to do it since 1987. You look at Edmonton, 1988, 2 losses. The Kings, 2012, the last time that a team had lost only 4 games. Now, mind you, 2 games to St. Louis, 2 games to this Tampa Bay Lightning team. The other 2 squads that they faced were both sweeps, Nashville and Edmonton. New Jersey in 95, Montreal in 93, Anaheim in 2007, Pittsburgh in 1992, and Edmonton in 1987. And of course, we remember right after Pittsburgh won that Stanley Cup in 1992, they were an absolute abomination. And I'm not going to say that that's going to happen here. We keep on moving forward here, Mike, and something else too, of course, with Colorado finishing 22, 56, and 4 back in 2017. The team, or the players that were on that team from such a long time ago, right? 5 years ago. Gabriel Landeskog, Mikko Rantanen, Erik Johnson, Nathan MacKinnon, JT Compher. In a 5-year span, they went from last place to first place. The last time that happened was 2009 with Pittsburgh. We also remember, too, with Pittsburgh, 2003, 2004. In the mid-2000s, Pittsburgh was another disaster. Carolina was a disaster after, or rather before, 2002, 2003, because they had made the move from Hartford down to Carolina. And Tampa Bay, they get the exception because they were just a brand new expansion team, and the same thing goes with Colorado. But you know what, Mike, I think the greatest part is, too, is that when you got to see yesterday, Gabriel Landeskog, I think we said it in our group off camera. Who is that Stanley Cup going to go to right after Landeskog accepted it from Deputy Commissioner Bill Daley? Went to Erik Johnson. He is the longest tenured Avalanche player. 14 years in the league. 14 years in the league, 12 with the Avs. He has seen it all. He's seen it all, and Gabe gave that to him. The cup went right to him, and right after from Erik Johnson, it went right to Andrew Cogliano. Keep in mind, for those fans out there, the hockey fans and the historians out there, Cogliano was not a part of the 2007 Ducks Stanley Cup team. He had come just a couple of years after, I believe in 2009. That is a fantastic, fantastic story. You've got Darren Helm 14 years ago, 2008, when Nicholas Lidstrom won the Norris. That was his last year on the ice, by the way. And now Darren Helm, who was bought out, one of the longest tenured Detroit Red Wings, signs a 1-year, $1 million, low-risk, low-reward contract in Denver. And he plays a crucial part. Mike, what you got a chance to see in this entire series, and we spoke about it last week too, because last Monday, I believe, was Game 3 at the time. The depth for Colorado was too much for Tampa to handle. Now, I've got to ask you this question. Is Tampa Bay done?
Are they done winning titles? Maybe. Are they done contending? Absolutely not. They're still going to be around. This is a team that Kucherov is not going anywhere. And let's not forget that Tampa made this massive run through the playoffs to try and get a third straight cup without Braden Point. So imagine they reach this point, reach the playoffs again next year. You have one of the best playoff scorers in the past couple of years in Point this time around. Maybe they make another run once again. Stamkos has a few years left in him. Like I said, Kucherov's still around. Most of this main core of the team still around. Cirelli has another year signed through. He was really key on that third line. So it's Hedman's still around. Their defense is going to be intact with Hedman, McDonough, Sergachev. That was a really good defensive pairing. So the core is still intact. Do they come back to earth a little bit? Or are other teams starting to catch up to them? Maybe. But I think it can't be overstated that Tampa Bay went this far without a crucial third-line scorer and point.
Yeah, and really keep in mind, too, some of the players that made not only such an impact, Mike, 11 goals, 10 assists, 21 points, which was good for second on the Tampa Bay Lightning squad in the playoffs. That's Ondrej Palat. Now, we've heard a ton about what Palat's contract history is and what that will be in about 2 weeks' time. What we also know is that Ondrej Palat was making $5.3 million for the last 5.5 or 6 years, give or take. And now he's due for a massive payday. Now, I'm going to disagree with you, Mike, there. Do I think that they're done? I don't think they're done, but I do not believe that this team will make it to the Eastern Conference Final for a very long time, and I don't believe it will be with this group. And why? Because the salary cap era is not a nice era to play in. It's not. You have to be one of the greatest coached teams in the entire league. When you look at some of the players that pretty much have to be signed and will be signed at some point, you look at Ondrej Palat, who is a unrestricted free agent, as well as Jan Rutta. Now, he played a big part. He was alongside Victor Hedman on that first defensive pairing, so that's a big deal. You obviously still have Brent Seabrook's contract, which is basically just cash, but unfortunately for the Lightning, that goes on their cap, $6.875 million for 2 more years. But the good thing, though, is that once the season starts, they could put him on long-term injured reserve. Brayden Point's $9.5 million contract kicks in starting today, or rather starting July 13th. Now, Riley Nash played a fantastic role, that fourth line, both left winger and right winger. He can also be a center too. He's just that fourth line general forward that he was able to do great stuff with. He was a face-off guy for a little bit. He was pretty much one of those grinders. Years ago when he was with Carolina, he was a solid second line center. Not so much anymore. But he filled in. He did the job. He did what he was able to do. Now, Nick Paul, he was a trade from Ottawa. Now, he's an unrestricted free agent. Now, this is where, Mike, it gets a little dicey. Because how can you re-sign Ondrej Palat when you have, now get this, folks, these RFAs, restricted free agents, all are arbitration eligible. Mikhail Sergachev, Eric Chernak, Ross Colton, and Anthony Cirelli. 4 players who will need new contracts at the end of 22-23. And you bet your sweet butts, all of you, that all 4 of those players mentioned here will be getting a significant pay raise. And that includes Mikhail Sergachev as well. And I think the biggest one here is Anthony Cirelli, who can definitely play second-line minutes. We saw him do it as the second-line center. We saw it last year. We saw it a couple of years ago in the bubble. We saw it in 21. We saw it this year as a third-line center. Now, Brayden Point also, for his sake and for the Bolts' sake, he comes back as the second-line center. John Cooper did say yesterday in the post-game press conference that he had an injury that most players come the regular season, if they were to sustain that injury, you wouldn't be seeing him till September. But because it was the Stanley Cup final, he's going to try and get him out there and try and get him to go. Pretty crazy stuff, no? Now, I think, Mike, what the craziest thing is, did you see what Val Nichushkin, with that foot injury that he had?
Which, the foot injury toward the end of the game, right?
Well, did you see it was before? It was before they or rather after the game. Someone put it on Twitter. I believe it was Darren Drager. Had put it online where Nichushkin took a picture of what he was dealing with. And it looked like some sort of fracture on the heel, right, of his foot, where every time he would try and take the skate on and off, he couldn't do it. He needed medical assistance to put on the skate. And he would hope. Now, this was the best part. He would hope for the best. Now, keep in mind, Val Nichushkin, obviously, that's Colorado's side of things. But we're talking about paydays. He's going to get one as well. But pretty wild stuff. And he's another grinder as well.
Yeah.
You know, we speak about all of that all the time. About some of these players that hockey players are one of the toughest in all sports. And we saw that here today. We saw that here this entire series, this entire Stanley Cup playoffs. Going back to what we were talking about also, Mike, is that I just truly do not believe that I think that they will definitely be a force to be reckoned with, but to have, I don't think you'll ever see that streak again.
No.
I don't think you will see that streak from them. And now after this, what Tampa Bay sustained for the last 2 seasons, the New York Islanders had a streak of 19 playoff series won back in the 80s when they won 4 straight Stanley Cups. This was the team, the Tampa Bay Lightning, to do it in our lifetime.
Yeah, I don't know if we'll see it because it's the salary cap era. It's a different ball game. You have to really be able to manipulate the cap well, and if you're going to be right up against it the way Tampa is, you're going to have a really, really good coach team to continue the kind of sustained success that they've had. And there are just so many variables to put together. I don't know if we'll see that again.
You know what's pretty cool too? Someone else who played, now we're going to flip back to the other side. With Colorado, right? We spoke about Joe Sacking. We spoke about how he became the 3rd general manager to lift the Stanley Cup as a player and then to hoist it again as the general manager. He had 34 points, Joe Sakic, that is, in 2001. Colorado won the Cup that year. It was eventually named the Conn Smythe winner, 2001. Cale Makar, 29 points, 8 goals, 21 assists, led all skaters with 27 minutes of ice time in 20 games. That's not the crazy part. 2019 first-round draft pick, I think 3rd or 4th overall, Bowen Byram. I remember hearing this kid's name and the way, and actually our good friend from the 4th period, Dennis Bernstein, DB, was so high on Bowen Byram. He knew right away that this kid at some point, he thought that this kid would eventually not only be up here, but be making waves in the NHL. He led the entire roster for both Colorado and for Tampa in plus-minus, +15. Arturi Lehkonen, Nazem Kadri, Val Nichushkin. 8 combined game-winning goals. 8 combined game-winning goals. I mean, when you look at those 2 players in Nichushkin and Lehkonen, no, they're both going to be getting paid. There's no doubt in my mind about it. And of course, because we've been doing so well with our graphics here, one more thing that we do want to show, obviously, about Darren Helm. He became the 4th player in NHL history to go 14+ years between Stanley Cup wins. And, of course, we did see Chris Chelios yesterday on TV. Mark Recchi, 1991-2006 Carolina. Keep in mind, also, Mark Recchi did retire after he won the 2011 Stanley Cup with Boston. So he's got 3. Keep that in mind. Billy Guerin, 1995 and 2009 with Pittsburgh. So a really, really fun Stanley Cup. And Mike, I think it's not that crazy to say that this Cup final may have been one of the best that we have seen in a very long time.
Yeah, I think this was a real. It's been said before on. I feel like we've said it a lot during the season. It's been one of the more exciting seasons for the NHL. Certainly, the deal to bring them back to ESPN has helped. The viewership numbers are up, engagement numbers are up. That's really helping the game of hockey as well. The playoffs was really entertaining. You had very early on in the first round, you had five series go to game sevens. So the overall playoffs and the body of work was just so entertaining. And then a Stanley Cup final series where it really felt this was the two best teams. The best team of the last few years going up against the up and coming power in the West. It was just really entertaining back and forth. This entire year was so good and a great way to end off the 2022 season.
Well, today it was officially announced that the Chicago Blackhawks hired a brand new head coach after pretty much years of mediocrity. And it's truly crazy to say that I remember, Mike, one of my first hockey games, and actually, I don't know if it was my first. Don't hold me to that, folks, but I'd have to ask my father that. My father is a Rangers fan. I'm an Islanders fan. Most know that. And for those that don't, well, there you go. I have a ticket from Madison Square Garden 2005 or 2006. Both the Rangers and the Blackhawks saw an original six matchup. Pretty cool stuff. It might have been my first hockey game. I don't know. As of right now in my ticket bin over that way. That is one of the oldest hockey tickets that I have. And mediocrity was pretty much that was the norm at the time. It was the norm, and for the Blackhawks, and also for the Rangers as well in the mid-2000s. And the reason why we bring that up is because it's been mediocrity since the Blackhawks had its dynasty.
Mm-hmm.
They had their dynasty. They did. 2010, 2013, 2015. And really since then, salary cap era kicked in. Artemi Panarin, he came up through the ranks. He was eventually traded to Columbus. They had Brandon Saad. They traded him. They traded back for him. Then they traded him again. Artemi Panarin, they had him. They traded him over to Columbus. Now they're trying their best to kind of get things going again. Luke Richardson, who's been around the block, was named the head coach of the Chicago Blackhawks. 1,417 total games played as pretty much as a brute, as a defenseman. The last 4 seasons, he was an assistant with Montreal. He was a part of 3 different regimes. He was a part of the Claude Julien regime. He was also pretty much a part of, I think for the last 4 years, it's been Claude Julien, Dominique Ducharme, and now Martin St. Louis, and he's been a part of all 3 coaching staffs. Back in 2017-18, he was the New York Islanders assistant. I remember down here, a lot of times they wanted Luke Richardson to become the next head coach after Doug Weight couldn't get things going in 17-18. That was one of the worst defensive teams in NHL history, was the New York Islanders at the time. And they wanted him to replace Weight. Obviously didn't happen. Retired defenseman, 21 NHL seasons. And when you say to yourself, Mike, that you've got Kane, you've got Taves, and that's pretty much it. Mm-hmm. It's not really a team, they don't have what it takes to get back to the promised land. And when you hear the Chicago Blackhawks, especially now in 2022, you think to yourself, they're a dynasty. They're a winning team. Not so much anymore.
No, long forgotten, though, those great teams of the early 2010s, that playoff run after playoff run. It's real. Jonathan Taves, people forget. Everybody thinks of Patrick Kane first, being the one now hanging around. Now all of a sudden he's 33, 34. Duncan Keith gone. We mentioned Panarin gone.
Yeah.
A ton of the pieces that were a main part of it all gone and hasn't been replaced properly. And it's going to be interesting how they try and piece it together once again. A new era, a new head coach. Of course, they had a lot of the off the field, off the ice scandals as well that plagued them the last year or so. So we'll see how they'll be able to start reloading and putting something together.
Issues in Chicago, it's been defense has been problems. They have to rebuild. Obviously, they're in the midst of a rebuild. It's not that they have to rebuild. They are in the midst of one. And also keep in mind too, one of their best trade assets in Alex DeBrincat is being dangled in front of the other 31 teams' face because he's one of the biggest trade possibilities and one of the best forwards on the trade market this offseason. They are going to get a haul for him. And the reason why we bring this up is because, Mike, I read an article which really puts things into perspective in terms of why Luke Richardson will be a solid head coach for this Chicago Blackhawks team who is in the midst of a rebuild. Now, for those that are on The Athletic and follow Mark Lazarus, who is the Chicago Blackhawks beat writer, he wrote a story today about Luke Richardson when he was the head coach of the Binghamton Senators. They were in a losing streak, and a bad losing streak. And there was a player that did not want to be identified that Mark spoke to and says, well, we came into the ice, or we came to the rink that day, and Richardson says, all right, we're going to do a bag skate. Drop all the pucks, everything goes, whatever. And it's pretty much like, you're going back and forth on the ice, continuing to do it over and over again. And what it was that you would think, all right, this team is in a massive slump. The players have to pay. But Luke Richardson, who was a player for many seasons, as we brought up, joined those players. Joined the players in the workout, in the agility drill, in the cardio drill. 40 minutes in a tracksuit. 40 minutes in a tracksuit, going back and forth on the ice. Back and forth, back and forth. He joined them, and then Chris Weidman, for those that know, former Ottawa Senator, who played at the time, not only with Richardson, but also for Richardson. He's invested with us, and his losing, or their losing, the team's losing, is also Richardson's losing as well. He said, quote, I'm on this losing streak too. And why I bring this up is because when you say to yourself, when you have yet another coach coming into play for pretty much the face of your franchise, the two faces of your franchise, and Jonathan Toews and Patrick Kane, how do you think that those two players are going to respond to another head coach coming in who is definitely a little bit older than those two, but another coach coming in your contract year? How do you respond with that? But this player, from what Chris Weidman said, he's a player's coach, and he's able to relate to the players because he's been through it too, end quote. Now, if that doesn't give you, for some of the teams that are still out there looking for coaches, Boston Bruins, it's a pretty good sign. It's a pretty good sign because when you have someone that's out there that doesn't have a lot of coaching experience telling you what to do, especially some of the veterans, might not sit well in the locker room. Especially how those two have been for pretty much their entire career, Mike. Mm-hmm. This is a good sign. Tell me if David Quinn came in I'll give the Rangers thing. If David Quinn came in and started telling Jonathan Toews and Patrick Kane what to do, which is not a bad thing, how do you think that would work?
Yeah, I don't think it'd work too well. Certainly, two guys who've been there, done that. There could be some problems caused. So it's an interesting way that Chicago's going about it. I think it is a sign that they want to try and keep Kane and Taves around potentially, to shepherd this rebuild as well for a couple years, or they're hoping to surround them with a coach that they'll respect, appreciate, get along with, mesh well, and can help try and generate a young core to follow them up.
But also the Kirby Docs of the world too, the youngsters. And in addition to all of that too, Mike, when you hear about this, they're on a losing streak and he joins them in certain practice drills because their losing is his losing too, he's going to be doing a ton of that. He's going to be doing a ton of that because this team is in the midst of a rebuild. What better coach to find than this player, former player, didn't have a ton of success, but will get down and dirty with those players because he's been there. It's truly remarkable. And I don't even think that it's going to be that much better or bigger, really, like a big difference, or, will really move the needle for the elder statesmen in Kane and Toews. I think it's going to make such a difference for the young players.
Mm-hmm.
And who knows? Could it pay off in the end? How long will Kyle Davidson and the entire Chicago Blackhawks brass deal with the losing? They have to see if they are losing well enough to keep Richardson around. If they're getting embarrassed, well, that's different. But we expect the losing to continue for a long time, which is why DeBrincat, who is pretty much their biggest trade acquisition, or their biggest trade asset, is going to be continued to be dangled in front of the other 31 teams' face. Let's keep on moving forward here. And, of course, just a couple of sports updates here. We do not, just because of lack of time, we're only just going to say this. Paul Maurice was hired by the Florida Panthers to take over for Andrew Brunette. Now, keep in mind, too, Florida, the Panthers were the President's Cup trophy winners. Andrew Brunette had a fantastic season, one of the best seasons in franchise history. He's out as the head coach. Paul Maurice comes in, and they're going to be needing a little bit of retooling also because of the salary cap issues as well. And, of course, that's something that just happened today. Don Sweeney signed an extension as the general manager of Boston, which I can tell you I know a few Bruins fans that are extremely, extremely furious about that, because you can cue the pasta rumors. And for those that understand what I'm saying, Casey Bryant, those rumors might also mean that David Pastrnak is possibly on the way out. Why? Because a report from Fluto Shinzawa, who actually appeared on our podcast a few months back, he had came out with a bombshell of a report saying that David Pastrnak, through his sources, will not be playing another minute under that general manager and Don Sweeney. So that is just the beginning of certain sagas that we will be seeing in Boston, and I cannot wait to see it. It's going to be a fun summer up in Boston and really throughout the entire NHL. Mike, let's keep on moving forward here. Major League Baseball. The New York Yankees, they had a bad Saturday. They also had a bad first half of Sunday. But here tonight, right now, Oakland and the Yankees, Anthony Rizzo with his 20th home run. It's 1-0 Yankees in the bottom half of the second with a runner on base. We'll get to that later on in terms of runners on and scoring position and whatnot. But they had a bad day on Saturday. They were no hit by Houston, first time since 2003. Good Lord help us. Mike was only 3 years old, still in diapers or just getting out of it. Crazy stuff. Mike, I know you don't remember 2003 well enough, but and I can tell you these players, I have to ask you, because we have, obviously a pretty good audience that now knows that Mike doesn't know some of these players. Roy Oswalt, Octavio Dotel, Brad Lidge. Do you know those three?
Brad Lidge is more familiar to me.
Oh, good Lord. Okay. Well, that is a start. Good. I'm glad. We got a chance to see what the Yankees were capable of on Saturday. If they don't hit the long ball, they literally get no hit.
I wouldn't go that far. I put it this way: this weekend, I think a lot of guys were entering slumps, and they came into a weekend with a really good pitching staff. I don't think Judge obviously stepped up in a big way this weekend, but the last couple weeks, well, let's put it this way: he hasn't been on the same incredible pace that he was earlier in the season, but obviously still doing Aaron Judge things. Giancarlo Stanton has been 4 for 48 in the last 12 games, although those 4 hits are home runs. So he's made some impactful hits, but in a bit of a slump. The lineup as well, in a bit more of a slump. Sure, they're always dependent on the long ball, but certainly I think this was a case this week. They're in a slump. You had a much better team with some really good pitching get to them. They could not take advantage of walk situations. I think Donaldson reached on an E5 later in the game as well. They could not take advantage of it. I thought for a second they were going to win the game without a hit, but that didn't happen. That would have been something for the stats books if that would have happened.
Right.
But oh my gosh, I was just scripting it up perfectly. I'm like, they're gonna get like 3 walks in this inning, and then it's gonna be another 2 walks come in or something like that. Some bizarre thing's gonna happen. Wouldn't be off script for this Yankees season. But I think it's just that they ran into good pitching. There's been some slumps, and I think this weekend has shown you the most that this team does need another batter or two. I think the biggest part, if we want to, go into the big picture, the reason why the Yankees have failed the last couple of years in the playoffs, yeah, everybody can say, oh, they could have used this pitcher, they could have used that to lessen the workload on the bullpen and whatnot, but it's mainly been hitting, and the hitters going cold in October. October's all about having really good hitters. You want to have some good, competent pitching, but it's all about your hitters getting hot to get you through the postseason, and that hasn't happened the last few years. And there's certainly signs this year that against a good pitching team like Houston, they might need another batter or two come the trade deadline if they want to get pushed over the hump. Because listen, every year for the Yankees, the culture's been built in that it's World Series or bust. But after this incredible start to the year, it certainly cannot end without a trophy. You don't want to be the 2001 Seattle Mariners.
That's very true. That I could tell you. And you know what? You bring up about the pitching that this Yankees team ran into. Christian Javier in that contest, 13 strikeouts, no hits, 7 innings. It was a 3-pitcher combined no-hitter. You look on the other side, though, Mike, and you say to yourself what Garrett Cole did. Garrett Cole had one heck of a game himself. He didn't have a bad game. He really didn't. 7 innings, 4 hits, 1 earned run, which came off the long ball, which was against Jose Altuve, 2 walks, and 8 punch-outs. That's not bad. That's a pretty good day. But the problem is when you look at the only 3 players that got on base, Josh Donaldson, DJ LeMahieu, and Aaron Hicks via the walk, that's tough. That is some tough stuff. And again, when you look at the needs of what this Yankees team may need, we brought this up too off camera. They need some contact hitters. They don't need more power hitters. They need contact hitters. They need some contact hitters LeMahieu-like, and we brought this up too. A player that can really do the damage by just getting a board on base, raising that on-base percentage, not by hitting the long ball. We're going to get you some numbers and stats here later on because, like I said, Mike knows these numbers, but for those folks that do not know the advanced numbers, we're going to get them to you because it is brutal, some of these numbers. And when you really dive deep into the struggles of the Yankees, when they do struggle, that is, it is so glaring that come October, you only have a very slim margin of error. You've got a best-of-7 series. The ALDS, the wild card game, whatever it may be now with the new rules or the new CBA, whatever it may be. I think the wild card game's out, actually, right?
Oh, it's a wild card series, just like
right, the wild
way
card
it was during the pandemic.
Right, exactly. So you've got the wild card series, you've got the division series, and then you've got the champion, the ALCS, the NLCS. Then you got the World Series. Very hockey-like. Pretty long for baseball players. That's going to be a little different. And again, if you go on a slump, if you have a slump, you could be out just like this and your season is done. You could have a 1998 type season, Mike. And if you go through just one little slump because you don't have another DJ LeMahieu type or someone that can get aboard on bait, can get aboard, or if you don't have someone beyond a LeMahieu or if Aaron Judge strikes out or if Giancarlo Stanton's on the injured list or Joey Gallo does not come into his own or Aaron Hicks becomes the starting left fielder for good, which we'll get to later on, of course, of who might replace or who might be the new left fielder come after the trade deadline. The Yankees need another contact hitter. Houston needs some bottom of the order guys badly. So expect both teams to be on the market come the trade deadline. And really now, we'll get to that later on too. Sports update. And then on Sunday, Mike, it was so close again. And then Giancarlo Stanton off of Jose Urquidy. 7 innings, no decision. That one hit was that Stanton home run. 3 walks, 3 punch-outs. The Yankees were no hit through almost 7 innings again. And then, go ahead.
I think the scary part for Yankees fans after this weekend. Listen, they've to put it into context. Put it this way: they went 9-4 in this real good 13 game stretch where they took on the Blue Jays, the Tampa Bay Rays, and the Astros. So you take that stretch any day. But I think this 4-game set that you see with the Astros was a real October preview.
Oh yeah.
You won't be surprised if those are 2 teams that once again the ALCS it comes all down to, because the 2 teams that are coming into the weekend best in the American League. The Yankees are far up in the AL East, the Astros far up in the AL West. Certainly wouldn't be surprised we see this series again in October, and it was a really good series. But I think you could look at this from positive and negative view, this series for the Yankees. The negative view, the scary part is that going into the deadline, if they stand pat, if Cashman just stands pat, and the Yankees have been number 1 offense, 1 and 2 in just about every single offensive category other than those deeper runners in scoring position statistics. They've been right up there. The pitching, their top 3 rotation statistically in Major League Baseball right now. So you're scared that Cashman's going to point to all of that, and they're not going to do anything and feel that they have the right team. This team needs another batter or 2. Maybe you think an offensive catcher to balance out Trevino or a left fielder to replace Gallo. Hicks probably has too much money on him to be dealt during the season. So that's probably the off-season's project. So you're probably looking to replace Gallo in left field. Someone who could play left and center to relieve Judge a little bit. If you want another outfielder, fine, but I wouldn't be surprised you see an offensive catcher, although the names aren't very deep behind Wilson Contreras.
Yeah. And keep in mind, too, I don't mean to interrupt you, Mike, but Wilson Contreras, he would cost an arm and a leg to get over here.
Yes and no. He would cost a little bit, but I don't think it'll be earth-shattering kind of cost for the Yankees.
Not like Ian Happ.
No, I think Ian Happ is the one that they really like, which obviously takes out Contreras. So it'll be interesting to see which bats they go for, which direction they go to. I think an outfield is a must, bottom line. Do they want 1 bat? Do they want 2 bats? But clearly, I think they need another offensive player come the deadline. They'll certainly be in discussions for a pitcher. Certainly, you won't be mad if they go after and do get one of the 2 big pitchers in Luis Castillo or Frankie Montas at the deadline. Although I wouldn't be surprised if they don't get him, just because it's not a serious need, although there is some longer-term concerns that we'll probably go into later. But there's also going to be other teams who are going to aggressively bid at them just because it's going to be more of a need, like the Blue Jays and whatnot. So that I think is the biggest thing. So getting back to the original thing, I think it's the scary part is that if they just stand pat, and I think this series you would hope showed the Yankee front office they got to add a little bit of offense here and there. The upside, the positive side of this weekend is they look bad in some of these games. Like obviously getting no hit Saturday, no hit through 16 straight innings.
Yeah.
They still came away with the split. And however they did it, they did not lead for a single inning throughout these 4 games and still came away with the split this weekend. A walk-off on Thursday, then of course the 2 losses Friday, Saturday, and walk-off again on Sunday. However they did it, despite all the bad play and whatnot, they did come away with the split.
Yeah, it's fantastic. But again, when you look at, when you look at some of the numbers, and this is the part where we brought this up early on that we were going to be giving you throughout the course of our discussion here. Mike, some of these numbers are worrisome. The New York Yankees as a team are 23rd with runners in scoring position, not including tonight's contest against the Oakland Athletics. This is before this game started. 23rd in runs in scoring position, 233 batting average, 31 home runs, which is good for first, right? With runners in scoring position, right? They've got 132 hits with runners in scoring position, which is good for 22nd. Now, just to put this into perspective, the New York Mets have 169 hits with runners in scoring position, which is good for second. Now, just imagine, right? We take away, Mike, the 31 home runs, right? That gives the New York Yankees 101 hits, which is beyond dead last. They rely so much on this long ball, which obviously they are the New York Yankees. They are the Bronx Bombers. We get that. But in today's day and age, when you live and die with the long ball, there are times when you could potentially get no hit, or you could see what happened last year or back in 2017. That's a scary thought. And then this is the even scariest part. Runners in scoring position with 2 out. 24th in Major League Baseball with a 208 batting average, and 27th in Major League Baseball with 52 hits. 52 hits with runners in scoring position and 2 out. 27th. That needs to get better, does it not? Where or am I missing something?
No, it definitely does, because we've seen the last couple of years, and that's why they failed in the postseason, is the bats have gone cold. Too many power hitters, they're not grinding out the at-bats enough, and they wind up getting shut down in the postseason. It hasn't been the pitching as much the issue. It's really been the offense. And like I said, this weekend, I think, was the best indicator that, yes, the Yankees have gotten off to an incredible start. You want to make the argument they beat up on some bad teams in order to do so. But regardless, they're 30-plus games over 500. But I think this weekend, at least psychologically, brought them back down to earth, that you'd hope that they figured out that this is what we need at the deadline. They're certainly going to be in the conversation for the pitchers, of course. They certainly need offense. And in my opinion, I would overhaul the outfield a little bit to get 2 outfielders, move Hicks to the bench, dump a couple of guys, dump Gallo. You're probably going to see Marwin Gonzalez go unless there are issues at the shortstop position, which are beginning to come about. Matt Carpenter probably, as we get into July, will probably go as well as he starts to cool down. But that's the biggest thing. Other than new acquisitions, like, that's my concern as well. You started to see a little bit of regression. I think Iser Kiner-Falefa has sort of become more of the player that we expected when the trade was made with the Twins. He had some big hits earlier on this season, was producing decently well offensively, hitting a little bit more above his weight. Now he's coming back down to earth, dealing with a couple of injuries or whatnot. The shortstop depth is not that large for the Yankees. Certainly Torres now, of course, having the ankle sprain and can't play shortstop to save his life. So you can't put him there. Marwin Gonzalez is a black hole offensively lately, so that's an issue. Josh Donaldson, I think, as much as he started the year off well, he's starting to become, again, sort of the player that you expected from the Twins when the trade was made with the Twins. A home run here or there, but a lot more strikeouts, a lot more, another big power hitter with a lot of strikeouts as well. So I think there's a little bit of concern for a little bit of regression, especially offensively.
And I think also the Yankees had so much hope for Josh Donaldson after he had such a good bounce back in Atlanta. When he was traded to Minnesota, he was eventually, or obviously prior back in 2015, keep in mind, he was the AL MVP up in Toronto. And I think what this Yankees team had hopes for, obviously, was to get that Josh Donaldson. Now, after so many injuries, right? We remember Josh Donaldson playing next to Troy Tulowitzki, right? We remember that, not too long, obviously, because Tulo couldn't stay healthy in Toronto. But that was when Toronto had first gone in all in. And then Donaldson's time had come in Toronto, had eventually followed his former general manager from Toronto, Alex Anthopoulos, down to Atlanta. He got another try in the big leagues. He pretty much fell off the map. And then now all of a sudden went to Minnesota, got things up and running once again. And now here he is in the Bronx. And it could not happen. It looked like possibly, maybe, we might see some flashes of what we saw in Toronto and Atlanta. But obviously, as you said, Mike, he began to cool down, and now you're seeing a ton of strikeouts. And now that brings us into our next question. Who could the Yankees look to acquire? And for those that are watching, please put it in the comments. We would love to hear who you believe the Yankees should acquire. Now, these are 4 players that we've got on here. We'll read that to you in a minute. Mike Szabo, who do you think the Yankees should acquire?
Well, going back to what I was saying about the outfield, it's been rumored a ton. We've seen fans talk about it a lot, and the 2 biggest names, of course, Andrew Benintendi and Ian Happ. Ian Happ, the rumors have always been that the Yankees have liked him. They've scouted him the last couple years or whatnot. He can play left and center, which is certainly a need after Hicks has been mediocre at center field this year, forcing Aaron Judge to play a lot of center field, which the longer the season goes, you might not love that. You don't want to start wearing Judge out, cause an issue with his legs or whatnot. You'd rather bring in an outfielder that can play some center field to split that time with him. You like Andrew Benintendi because obviously I think he can play a little bit of center field, although others aren't as high on that. But an easy replacement for Gallo right there. Brings World Series pedigree over from his time with the Red Sox. Has some good career numbers at Yankee Stadium for whatever reason. Has really good numbers. Doesn't bring more of a contact hitter. Doesn't bring as much power. But a good lefty contact bat who's having a fairly decent year. Happ has been having some pretty good numbers as well. So that's probably the 2 names that you'll probably hear the most, whether it's Yankee fans or rumors and whatnot.
Now, the thing that, a few dark horses, obviously, that, a few names that I wrote down in my handy dandy notebook that, when I was doing my research, when we were trying to come up with, pretty much our talking points for episode number 89. I know Mike has been in love with Ian Happ and with Andrew Benintendi, but there are another 2 dark horses that really could potentially make a difference if, let's just say, if there are some depth issues, if there are some injuries, which we know with this Yankees team is very, very, very possible. Another player, in addition to the Andrew Benintendi and Ian Happ conversation that Mike had, I had those two written down there as well. But the other two, one of Brian Reynolds from Pittsburgh, who is also a center fielder. But the problem also is that he would probably cost maybe a decent amount, and especially too where Pittsburgh is in a constant rebuild, probably since before even I was born. They've been in constant rebuild, and I don't know, let's say maybe dating back to the Honus Wagner days, they've been in rebuild. And then, of course, from the Washington Nationals, who would probably cost a ton anyway, but someone that really fits the need as well would be Josh Bell. But unfortunately, they don't need a first baseman. But again, if injuries do occur, they could potentially revisit that, and then the general manager down there and Mike Rizzo would be very happy, because then he's got a lot of leverage on Brian Cashman and the Yankees organization. But Mike, when you hear those two names in Brian Reynolds and Josh Bell, do you agree? Do you disagree? What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, Reynolds, I would love, love, love. I mean, I don't think he's been at the same really good pace that he was last year. I think his numbers are a little bit down, but I mean, that's a guy that next 5 years, if you acquire him next 5 years, you plug him in center field and you don't have to think about it. You'll get 120, 140 games out of him there.
Well, that's what the Yankees thought with Aaron Hicks too, and look where we are.
Yeah. He's got the age on Hicks too, yeah, just to compare those two, and he's just he's a fantastic player for an otherwise bad Pittsburgh Pirates franchise, but the cost is it's just an unrealistic deal. Yeah. Unless you're willing to trade Anthony Volpe, Brian Reynolds is not happening.
Yeah. I mean, when you look at a Josh Bell also, Mike, and you say to yourself, he used to play also on Pittsburgh. Keep that in mind. He can also fill in some of the voids as well, especially, and he can do both. He can hit for power, but he's mainly a contact hitter as well, which is a big deal. And he can also potentially back up Rizzo as well over at first. But then you say to yourself, well, then that kind of leaves potentially LeMahieu in limbo over at second, at third. That moves Donaldson out. Who does that put pressure on? Or does that even happen?
Well, here's how so the thing is Rizzo right now, you'd like Bell, as you said, to back up Rizzo. Right now they back him up with LeMahieu. LeMahieu shifted around. LeMahieu will probably play a lot of second. Yeah. Guessing Torres, if he's out for the next couple of days. I know they said the ankle seemed okay, will be out for a couple of days, but they also did a test on his wrist, so he can't pick up a bat till Wednesday. So it'll probably be a week. So you'll see a lot of DJ LeMahieu at second. LeMahieu's been much better at third base defensively this year than last year, so he's able to spot Donaldson over there at times. So I think they have a cover, but I think you want a little bit of more diversity in the offense. More, you need to acquire a bat, shake it up, and whatnot. Adding hot bats to try and get you to and through October. Bell could be an interesting addition. We always know him for the power and whatnot, but has some contact ability too. A lefty bat always isn't bad to balance out the lineup too. So I think that could be interesting. Certainly a name that's a pretty good under the radar name that you don't hear that often.
Right, exactly. And really the big thing too, obviously, I actually rated on here or ranked in terms of what the Yankees would need. And again, I'm just playing closet Brian Cashman here while having a podcast with all of you. My number one here was Ian Happ. And the reason why is exactly what Mike had brought up, is because he's so versatile. He can also play second base as well. That's another thing too. He can also play the infield at times. Now, our good friend, not only of the brand, but also my personal friend in Anthony Iapoce, who used to be the Chicago Cubs hitting coach, who is now the Boston Red Sox senior hitting coordinator. he would always talk so highly of Ian Happ. Why? Because of not only the professionalism that he brought in the clubhouse, the work ethic that he would do, that he would put forth day in and day out, help some of the youngsters, which if he were traded to the Yankees, he wouldn't really have to deal with. But also the work ethic. And that's really the biggest thing here. You look at some of the numbers that the Yankees have been struggling with. We brought up early on, Mike, about runners on, runners in scoring position, and runners in scoring position with 2 outs. Look at these numbers. Look at these numbers that Ian Happ has done with a subpar lineup around him. 246 batting average with runners on, 288 batting average with runners in scoring position, and runners in scoring position with 2 out. This man is hitting .310. Keep in mind, as you brought up, also an outfielder. He can light a flame for Joey Gallo and Aaron Hicks to get their butts together. Friendly competition. And he can also play second base.
Not Joey Gallo, not Joey Gallo. I'm sorry, but he's gone. I'm sorry. He's gone.
Where do you see the whole thing, though, that I have is that you traded so much for Joey Gallo. You traded a lot.
You're going to have to swallow the bullet. Trade him for a vending machine at this point. You're going to have to swallow the bullet. I know they want to make it work because they traded a lot for him. But, I mean, you've had half the season. It's not working out. Even
do you leave him on the bench?
At times.
Do you leave him on the bench?
No, because you'd have Hicks on the bench. And you're already going to have a spot for Higashioka. So you have Hicks, Higashioka, and do you want to keep around Marwin Gonzalez for depth if there continues to be injury concern over Kiner Falefa or Torres, or there's been talk of bringing up Oswald Peraza? How does he do if that doesn't pan out as well? There's not a lot of options on the market for a shortstop, so do you keep him around? Now you already have 3 spots on the bench taken up. Just stashing Gallo doesn't help either. Maybe you get him for a minor league reliever that you can hope to build up in the next year or so. But I think if you acquire an outfielder, Gallo, I don't see a spot on this roster for Gallo.
Well, and again, the only position player or the only infielder that would make sense would be a Josh Bell or would be a first baseman type player. But then again, if you're only limited to first base and designated hitter, you want someone like an Ian Happ who can play all around the field and who can also hit for contact, not only for home runs.
And just looking at the cost of it, Happ will cost a fair deal, but it won't break the Yankees farm system. So there's that. He's certainly acquirable. It's not like they have to overbid or something like that. It's going to take a crazy ask or something like that. It'll take a little bit, but it won't be over the top breaking the Yankees farm system. Benintendi's a free agent after this year if they want to go that route. So really won't cost a lot. Bell, I believe, is probably in a similar situation. So I don't think it'll just looking at the cost of it, they're all very doable deals. I agree with you on Happ. I think, like going back to what we said before, I think the Yankees have liked him for a while. We'll see if that's true or not, but I wouldn't mind having him on the team. But just going back to the roster maneuvers, I don't think anybody who you acquire on that list. I think Gallo's, especially an outfielder, I don't see a place for Gallo. But like I said, probably Happ 1 if we're going on that list. Benintendi 2. I think Happ's having a pretty good year. I think helps the team offensively. They need another bat to freshen things up. Who knows what happens when we hit the dog days. A couple of guys hitting slumps or whatnot. So,
and he's also a switch hitter too. Mm-hmm. And the big part about that too is that he can bat lefty. That's the best part, is that they need some left-handed batters. They need a left-handed batter. Josh Bell bats right. Thankfully, Brian Reynolds, he does, I believe, bat. He does bat lefty. Andrew Benintendi does as well. So obviously, those are the 3 players that they would really have their eye on. And I don't think, and again, with Josh Bell, that's pretty much a very, very dark horse, so slim if everything went wrong. But if I had to choose, it would be 100% Ian Happ. Because again, when you look at some of these, numbers, Mike, 53 team home runs with runners on, first in Major League Baseball, 251 total hits with runners on, which is 19th in Major League Baseball. If you subtract every home run, it's dead last in Major League Baseball. That is 198 total hits. Oakland right now has 210. You need those contact hitters. It has to happen. An update here for all of you. Some good news on the way for all of the Yankees fans out there. Aroldis Chapman pitched a perfect 7th inning up at double A Somerset for the Somerset Patriots on Sunday. So that is some good thing, something good there, some good news. Jonathan Lawizaga also is making his way back, Mike. But the problem that most likely will be is, where do you fit Chapman? He's not going to be the closer when he comes back, because Clay Holmes pretty much, for the most part, has that locked up.
You would think.
Where do you see those two coming in?
In my opinion, if it were up to me, I'd keep Clay Holmes as the closer. He's had a really dominant year thus far. ERA's, 0.28 on the year. And slide Chapman as your setup man, 8th inning guy or whatnot. But Boone has kind of hinted that he would put Chapman back in the closer role, which I seriously disagree with. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Clay Holmes has just carved out a role at the back end of the bullpen and has been absolutely dominant. Chapman scares you. His previous history, of course, as the Yankee closer, and especially in big games, scares you, giving up big hits, big home runs. His command certainly coming back from injury, how much of an issue that's going to be with his kind of stuff. I'd rather that in the 8th inning. And in other years, yeah, the Yankees had Zach Britton or whatnot, but they had liked him as a setup man. They really have someone that you've now put into that role in quite often. What is it, a month now, 2 months we've seen Clay Holmes as the closer.
Correct.
You've seen someone in that role for a long time, which you haven't seen in other previous years, that that can fill that role. Why not have someone like Holmes, who they talk about it on the broadcast all the time, is so good to have as a closer, a real good ground ball pitcher. You don't have to worry about Chapman's, fastball flying to the backstop or whatnot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Giving up a big home run or something like that. He's got good pickoff moves they talk about for anyone trying to steal the base, gets the ball in very well. He has a lot of good traits, Clay Holmes, that makes him a good closer there. So I don't know why they'd want to break that up, but Boone suggested that, has kind of hinted that he might. Lawizaga, the big thing for him is he got off to this season off to a rough start. If he comes back, how quick, and for the Yankees, it'll be huge. How quickly can he get back to his 2021 form, where he was just unbelievable? I know a lot of people talk about maybe in a trade for a hitter or whatnot, they can try and get a reliever or something like that. It wouldn't be a bad idea. I do think they need to replace Lucas Luetge probably, but they have some internal help. That's the other thing for the Yankees. You have some internal help. Chapman, Lawizaga. Nobody talks about Marciano, who I think just got sent down, but he's had a really good year in the bullpen as well. How well they've been building him up over the last year. And then you hope September you get Zach Britton right in September, right in time for the playoffs. So who knows if Cashman, just trusts his internal options and doesn't have to say to a Cubs or a Royals or whoever, hey, let's, add in a reliever here and,
Right.
hope he gets a Clay Holmes type deal.
Yeah, it's very possible, especially where Cashman did make that deal for Clay Holmes, and we remember that deal multiple times has been popped up all over social media, where it was a very, very, very one-sided deal, and the Yankees pitching staff, the coaching staff really has developed Clay Holmes into one of the better relievers in the entire Major League, in all of Major League Baseball. Keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, the crazy part, 31 and a third innings, scoreless baseball. Clay Holmes. It was wild stuff. And he was all so close to making it 32 innings. So close. Right, Mike? I think it was, 31 and 2/3 he was close to?
Yep.
Yeah.
He was right there.
Yeah.
Gave up a home run late on, I think.
Right, exactly. 31 and a third. Up there with the big boys, with the big names. But speaking of the big names, one giant big name is out for the count for a little while, Mike, and that is Bryce Harper. Bryce Harper is out indefinitely, which most expect the earliest to be 6 to 8 weeks. But now that they found out that the thumb is broken, which was caused from a fastball from Blake Snell on Saturday afternoon in San Diego, pretty much the only offense for this Philadelphia Phillies team is now down for pretty much we would expect till September. This is a crucial loss for a team that started to turn things around after the firing of Joe Girardi.
Yeah, they were starting to turn things around. They have a decent offense around Harper, and you always thought going into the season, this preseason, that if the Phillies were going to have any sort of success in the NL East, that they were going to have to outslug their pitching, especially behind Wheeler and Nola. You've had a lot of issues with defense. Harper and his arm injury earlier on in the year prevented him from playing the outfield as much, so you're really relegating him to a DH already. Still has been a fantastic offensive player this year for them. You've had a little bit of good performances around here and there from Castellanos and whatnot.
Keyword is some. That's the problem. Keyword is some.
They have a generally good offense, and I believe it's a top. I had the stats this morning. The top 10 offense in the league, but of course, a large part of that is Bryce Harper. Yeah. So now you're losing that. It's going to be really tough for them because, like you said, they were just starting to turn it around. The pitching was starting to perform a little better. They were starting to churn out the wins, and this is just an absolute gut punch that I don't think they can recover from.
Yeah, it's tough. And Mike, you brought up too about the pitching behind Aaron Nola and Zach Wheeler. That is the biggest question mark. We know that the bullpen for this Philadelphia Phillies team is an absolute abomination. You look at one of the players in, of course, Mets legend Yuris Familia in his last 3 games played. Now, get this, a 27 ERA, 8 hits, 7 runs, 3 home runs. Brutal stuff. Kyle Gibson, 3 starts. He's 0 for 1 with a 4.76 ERA in his last 15 total days of gameplay. So he's obviously has three started games there. And they need more depth pitching behind Nola and Wheeler because those two cannot do it all. They can't do it all. And if they try and put all of the pressure on those two, one is going to give out. And the problem too, Mike, is that I'm sure you know just as well as I and the entire Mets fan base do, Zach Wheeler has some injury history. He's got some injury history. So, you don't want to put that much stress on Wheeler right now. Both him and Nola, they are 1 and 2 in terms of the rotation down in Philadelphia for Rob Thompson, and also in the top 10 for Wheeler in ERA, and for Nola in the top 20. You also look at some of the players too, Mike, that say to and you say to yourself, you brought up the Castellanoses of the world. JT Realmuto, who has been really, since arriving in Philadelphia, has been an absolute disaster. And I remember a lot of Yankees fans wanted him. They wanted him from Miami. They wanted him when his contract was up in Philadelphia last year, and all of a sudden Philadelphia signed them to a lucrative contract. He's getting older. And he's hitting a measly 237. Castellanos, 252 batting average. Alec Baum, a 259 batting average. It's not going well. And really I don't want to say the most obvious one that we saw coming, but one that we saw coming. Kyle Schwarber, 219 batting average, 21 home runs, 58 hits, and this is the kicker right here, ladies and gentlemen. 92 strikeouts. 92 strikeouts. It's third in Major League Baseball. Patrick Wisdom is number 2. And Eugenio Suarez is number 1 with 102 strikeouts. That's a brutal list to be on. And when Kyle Schwarber and the entire offense need you, you're putting up these numbers? Again, the 4 players that really are the support team for Bryce Harper. Those are the numbers, Mike, that they're putting up. You brought up about how Didi Gregorius had just been coming off of injury. Well, thank goodness for that. You know why? Because when Jean Segura broke his hand, Didi had came back. And then Bryson Stott had moved over. Then Didi had gotten hurt again. And then it's pretty much been an absolute shuffle fest. This is the part where we've brought up time in and time again how Dave Dombrowski guts teams from the top down, or from the bottom up, actually. That's more like it, from the bottom up. He goes from the farm system, trades away all of your farm, and tries to win. Okay, that's fair. But at the same time, though, you have to develop some talent. You don't have any now in the Philadelphia Phillies system. And with these numbers here, Mike, this is a team that looks like, again, will be in yet another rebuild. You were 9 years old. You were 9 years old, correct, when the Phillies won the World Series?
8.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, 8. You were 8 years old, 2008.
And then 9 when the magical, wonderful year happened.
It's just really crazy to say that this team that was in the dog years, dog days, the brutal days, the brutality that they endured night in and night out, 2012, 2013, 2014, 15. Those were bad years. This Philadelphia Phillies team, Mike, do you agree that this team is going down that road again?
Yeah, it's not looking good. You lost Harper, which was a main offensive piece. A lot of guys who have a lot of guys around him with a lot of inconsistent performances. Some good performances here and there, some solid numbers, but very inconsistent. You lose a real strong piece like Harper just when they were starting to figure some things out, and I don't see it heading well. Harper was a real igniter of the offense, and already the pitching is not great either. We just went through it behind Wheeler and Noah. The pitching isn't great either. The NL East is not going to get any easier. The Mets continue to keep up their pace. The Braves, as we usually know, get stronger and stronger as the year goes on, which they're starting to rev up their engines currently.
Yep.
So, I don't think it's gonna. It's just they're gonna be planted in that third spot, or let's say Miami maybe catches them later on. It's not gonna go well from here on out for the Phillies, and it's a shame because they signed Harper with the dreams of the future. They're gonna vault up this division and whatnot, and it really hasn't panned out. They didn't get the Kyle Schwarber from 2021, which, you knew he's going to be low average, higher home runs or whatnot, but this is a lot of strikeouts for him. And the offense around just hasn't, whether it's been this year or the last couple years, hasn't been consistently there. And the pitching and definitely the bullpen has just been all over the place, which was kind of strange for a Joe Girardi team and whatnot. And I hadn't really seen the Joe Girardi that's able to somehow eke 5 to 10 more wins out of a team that shouldn't and whatnot. And now he was fired. They looked like they were turning some things around, and now it's not. And it's not heading into a good place. Yeah,
it's really tough to see with this Phillies team that, again, not too long, or actually the year after the aforementioned Bryce Harper signed with Philadelphia, his former team, the Washington Nationals, won the World Series, which, they say, oh, maybe we didn't need you after all. But Maybe it was him. Maybe it was him that was the problem. But, staying on topic, of course, though, I don't think that this Phillies team can recover. I don't think that they can recover, especially this year, because if you start buying this year, which I don't think they will anyway, because if now that Harper is out, where do you go? Where do you go if you're Rob Thompson? You have to try and rely on that supporting cast. And Mike, we read those numbers. It's a disgrace. It's not good. Rhys Hoskins, where do you go from there with him too? He's really struggling as well. Rhys Hoskins struggling, Baum struggling, Castellanos not doing great this year. JT Realmuto, not great either.
And it's interesting where they go at the trade deadline, because you're at that tipping point, just barely over 500. They're 3 games off the Braves. The National League is wide open in terms of a wild card spot, the general standings and whatnot. Do you decide to go for it, try and get a couple of hitters to replace Harper and his injury and whatnot? Or do you just sell off and say, you know what, we don't have enough? The National League is too wide open. We're not at a good spot. It's going to be interesting where they go for the deadline. You have the Cardinals and Brewers. One of those two are probably going to wind up being in the conversation for the wild card in the Central. The Dodgers and Padres are right there neck and neck. So Padres are looking as a wild card team, or if they overtake the Dodgers, the Giants are certainly going to sniff into it, and whoever loses out in the division race in the NL East.
Yeah. Well, let's keep on moving forward here and staying in the National League East. The New York Mets, though, they lost yesterday via the walk-off, and via the long ball by Nick Fortes, off of Adam Ottavino yesterday. And of course, the Mets are also close to getting Max Scherzer back as well. So that's some good news. But, yesterday with the Mets, they didn't look that great in Miami either.
Yeah, you still took 2 out of 3. So could have had a chance for the sweep. Wasn't great and whatnot, but you still were able to get 2 out of 3. I believe they were going. I thought it was Alcantara. It wasn't a day for Alcantara, but he had a really good day for Daniel Castano. But it happens. It's not really great. You would have loved the sweep there. Final day of the series. Close game and whatnot. You would have liked to see it, but not the worst thing. They were able to take 2 out of 3. They haven't lost the series with the Marlins, I believe, this year. And the biggest thing with the Mets, they've continued to. I wouldn't say dominate. They haven't gone on a really impressive run or whatnot. I believe their record the last 10 is 6-4. But they've won the series that they've needed through in June. They've done what you need to do to hold on to the division lead somewhat. And now you're going to start getting Scherzer back. In a couple weeks, you'll get DeGrom back, and whatever additions they make at the deadline as well.
Well, something else too, Mike, we got a chance to see last Tuesday and Wednesday after episode number 88 had aired. The New York Mets had fell to the Houston Astros down in Texas, and they lost by a score of 8-2 and 5-3 Tuesday and Wednesday respectively. And now starting tomorrow, the Mets will be hosting the Astros at Citi Field. Now, when you look and say to yourself, well, this is a potential World Series matchup, and you fall 8-2 and 5-3, do you say to yourself, well, that could potentially be an asterisk because we didn't have our 2 best pitchers? Or is this something that Billy Epler is going to be looking at and saying, all right, we are struggling here against one of the best teams in baseball. How do we improve come the trade deadline? What do you see here in terms of the vision that Steve Cohen and company will be looking at in this crucial 2-game set tomorrow?
I think they'll really be looking at it. This is the time. These are the series where, right when they fall on the calendar, right on the cusp of July, where teams are really going to look at what their needs are, where they fit, and certainly a contending team, what they need. Cohen has certainly put it out there that he will go all in if he has to. He will spend what he needs to in order to put this team over the top. You may be thinking that they're going to be involved in the bidding, even though they have Scherzer and DeGrom. Maybe they're going to be in the bidding for Castillo or Montas, which they get one of those. I mean, that's quite a postseason rotation there. You've had some concerns over Bassett, but if you do push him down to number 4, I mean, that's quite a rotation. Taijuan Walker has seemed to improve a little bit the last couple of starts, so that's
Carlos
a really
Carrasco.
intriguing sign. Carlos Carrasco's putting a really decent year for the veteran that he is. So you look at a pitcher, maybe an impact bat, but I think these are 2 games that they're going to look at. That if, let's say, they lose these 2 games against the Astros, that means 4 games they'll have gotten swept by one of the best teams in baseball, and certainly on the American League side. They're seriously going to evaluate the team and say, listen, we want to be a World Series team. Cohen has put out that expectation, a different mentality than we saw in the previous ownership.
Yeah.
And they'll probably get a little more aggressive at the deadline.
Yeah. And that's definitely, I'd have to agree with that also. And the way I looked at it, especially when, looking at some of the statistics with that and seeing what this Mets team is all about, this Mets team is really, really good. And I do believe that they are for real. But again, we won't know if they are for real until they play the big boy teams. And here they are. They are playing them. They got smoked in game 1 last week. Game 2, they narrowly lost 5-3. But again, awfully tough when you could potentially, you can go by saying, oh, well, we didn't have Max Scherzer. We didn't have Jacob deGrom. Well, that's okay. You have to find a way. It's the next man up mentality that you have to have. So we'll have to see what this is all about here. And I'm going to venture to say that I do believe that they are going to go after, excuse me, they are going to go after a pitcher for sure. There's no doubt. It's just a matter of which pitcher it will be, and I would not be surprised if they, obviously there's going to be the Brett Beattys of the world, the Alvarezes of the world, that those 2 are completely untouchable unless something monstrous comes their way, which even if something did, I don't expect either one of those 2 to be even mentioned. Mike, let's keep moving forward here. And of course, let's go back into the American League East and let's look to Boston. This is a team that we obviously both cannot stand, but the problem is that this team is good in the month of June. There is no ifs, ands, or buts here. There's no sugarcoating it, nothing. They're 19-4 in the month of June. They're on a 7-game winning streak. They're only 11 games back of the Yankees. That may sound like a lot, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not. Is there cause for concern for the rest of the American League East?
Yes and no. In the division, I don't think as much. I don't want to say in an 11-game lead, oh, you know, this and that, you're over. I've seen them blow before. Not often, but I've seen them, the division leads like that, be blown. I'm not saying it's going to happen here, but I think you're having more of an eye on the postseason in terms of concern, certainly the stretch run in the postseason. I think this is what I expected more of the Red Sox to be in the before the season started. Not that they would go on a 19-4 run or whatnot, but that they would be more of this team, you know, just hovering or 5 to 10 games over 500 come July, come toward the period of the deadline. That even though the pitching, you look at all the names before the season started, you think, is that really going to be a postseason or a championship caliber rotation or whatnot? Certainly the hitting, maybe there's some gaps or whatnot, injury concerns and everything. On the pitching side, whether it's Chris Sale, on the hitting side, I believe Martinez was hurt for a couple games earlier this year. I'm not too sure about that. But I always expected that somehow Cora, being the good manager that he is, that they were going to somehow piece it together, figure out a way to get to July, get to the deadline, 5-10 games over 500, they make a couple of good moves, and they start going on a run toward the stretch part of the season and are in real good shape for the postseason. Didn't look like that early on. Now they're starting to come on. Trevor Story is playing a lot better. Xander Bogaerts and Rafi Devers are playing fantastic this year. Garrett Whitlock in the rotation due to injury has had a really fantastic year. Nobody talks about Michael Wacha out of nowhere. Has had
Mets legend Michael Wacha.
Has had an unbelievable season. He's been a journeyman the last couple years after being a huge part of St. Louis's World Series team in 2013, been a journeyman all over the league, has found the groove this year somehow, 2.34 ERA. So you've got some good performers all over the place. The offense has been performing a lot better the last month or so, and this is right where you expected the Red Sox to be. 5 to 10 games over 500. Cora puts it together, and Chan Bloom is probably going to make a couple of moves, a pitcher, a couple of bats, and they might be one to watch out for their experience later on in the season. Maybe not as much for the division, just the postseason in general.
The last 15 days for Boston, 298 team batting average first in Major League Baseball, 383 team on base percentage first in Major League Baseball, 62 ribbies is good for 7th in Major League Baseball, 51 walks is 5th in Major League Baseball, and 27 doubles. Xander Bogaerts, we brought up obviously, or Mike brought up before, he has been on an absolute tear in the last 15. 458 on base percentage, 15 hits, 5 walks, 4 ribbies, and a 375 batting average. Rafi Devers, you brought up, who has been an absolute Yankees killer. 333 batting average, 13 hits, 3 homers, 10 ribbies, and a 490 on base percentage. We cannot forget about somebody that came over in the Mookie Betts deal. Alex Verdugo, 302 batting average, 13 hits, 13 for 43 in his last 15, 10 ribbies, 2 homers, and a 388 on base percentage. Mike, someone else too, in terms of the pitching, right? It's not only Garrett Whitlock. He's hurt. Chris Sale is hurt. Nate Eovaldi is hurt. Can't wait to see what happens when James Paxton comes back. Low risk, low reward, or low risk, high reward. We'll see what happens there. The two pitchers that really have stuck out to me, not only Mike Wacha, but Nick Pavetta and Josh Winchowski, a combined 6-0 in their last 6 starts. Truly insane. Nick Pavetta. Mike, do you remember him on Philadelphia?
Yeah.
Remember when and he started pretty well. He was similar, keyword similar, to the way Vance Worley started in Philadelphia, the way he started his career many, many moons ago. He started really, really well and then fell off a cliff. Nick Pavetta, his last 3 starts, 1.64 ERA, 22 innings of work, 17 punch-outs, 4 earned runs. For Winchowski, 3-0 win-loss record, 2.12 ERA, 17 innings of work, 17 hits, 9 Ks, and only 4 earned runs allowed. And again, this is all without Chris Sale. This is all without Nate Eovaldi. He is 2-0 in the month of June, though, before going to the injured list. Garrett Whitlock, as you brought up, 1-0, 2 games started in the month of June, 3.60 ERA. And we can't forget about Rich Hill, too. This is a team that continues to show that next man up mentality. It's absolutely wild to see this Boston team. I think, with what Mike said, Chaim Bloom will be making a couple of moves that will put the flame underneath Brian Cashman's chair. I have to believe it. I truly believe it.
Well, in the Yankee fan perspective, you hope it does, because there are adjustments that need to be made on their end.
Yeah.
For the Red Sox end, to plant a seed of doubt in the rest of the AL East mind, certainly for Yankee fans, the Red Sox are playing much better, and they still have a lot of games to play against the Yankees on the schedule.
Yeah.
So it's not like where the Yankees have pretty much are done with the Blue Jays, played a lot of them and whatnot, have a good record on them. Haven't played the Red Sox that much outside of the opening day series. So if you're the Red Sox, if the Yankees start entering a little bit of a slump, win record-wise, if you start going on a bit of a run, you also have plenty of games against them.
Yeah.
To say that I don't think I think the Yankees would lose the division lead. I don't think they will. I think they'll have enough, but it's not a foregone as for there's a potential situation where you could see things get a little spicy.
Yeah. I mean, this is a team and two teams that you brought up that, yes, they've played Toronto with and Boston, the Yankees haven't played a ton with, but with all of the injuries that Boston has had, if they don't get Chris Sale back, if they get Eovaldi back, they don't get Paxton back, if they get Whitlock back, it's okay. They can move a few guys around. Winchowski, we expect to probably be back in the bullpen, or somebody else down at Pawtucket, wherever it may be. I would have to say that I don't know if this is sustainable, which is why I do believe that Chaim Bloom will be making a couple of adjustments to keep this going. And when you look at what Bogarts, Devers, and Verdugo have all done, and Devers, mind you, in his last 7 games, .412 batting average, 7 for 17. This man is on a tear, and he's not stopping. But let's look at the bottom portion of the order. They're going to be competing with Houston also in getting some potential reinforcements for that bottom portion of Alex Cora's order. I think Toronto's out of it. I think Tampa's out of it. Baltimore, congratulations. They won 30 games for the first time this early in nearly, I think, like 6 years. Big deal. Boston is a force to be reckoned with, but I do not believe that they can hold on. I don't see it. I think that there's no choice, but they have to. I think this is.
Wait. You said the Blue Jays are done?
I believe that the Blue Jays they're too far back.
Of the division, they're certainly getting in that wild card.
No, that's fine. I'm talking. Yeah, that's fine. But I'm talking about. I don't believe that they can. I don't think that they could make a massive jump in terms of the way that they're playing. Can Toronto go on a run like Boston? They have the players to do so.
Mm-hmm. They would need upgrades to the bullpen and another rotational piece.
Yeah, well, they need to replace Hyun-Jin Ryu.
Yeah, they have the offense. They got guys who get hot around Vlad. That they could have some sort of run like that, but their bullpen outside of Jordan Romano is a lot of question marks. And certainly they'd need a rotational piece to make sure they get into that wild card and if they'd want to go any further.
Sports update here on the Eastern Observer. The Mariners traded for Carlos Santana from Kansas City early on today for a couple of pitchers, minor league pitchers. So that is a sports update. The Seattle Mariners traded for first baseman Carlos Santana. 2 minor league pitchers went the other way to Middle America. Speaking of Middle America, as John Rothstein would always bring up in terms of Creighton University, let's go to not too far from where Mike Szabo is and go to St. John's, go to our alma mater. And today we got a chance to see Mike Anderson post his infamous, the Red Storm, if you will, GIF on Twitter. So usually when we see that, a commitment has officially committed to Union and Utopia. And that's exactly what happened today, Mike. 4-star recruit Brandon Gardner, 6'8", Georgia native. He committed to St. John's today, class of 2023, and there's a good chance that a lot of New York City kids will be able to see him play because he will be most likely concluding his high school career somewhere in the city.
Yeah, a really fantastic get for St. John's. The biggest part of the Mike Anderson era, the recruiting has slowly been picking up. I think the staff has increasingly got better with recruiting. Certainly the high school recruiting, they've really strengthened the local relationships around the city. We saw that with the recruitment with Posh Alexander, Dylan Adewusu, previously, of course, Julian Champagny, who's now departed. but it's also overall recruitment that's starting to be boosted. Bringing in Greg Vatronin last year has also helped out the staff as well with recruiting. The transfers they brought in this year in terms of Mike Anderson's era in terms of transfer recruiting did not get off to a really good start. Of course, he didn't have to replace the entire team at first. Still had some leftovers from Chris Mullen's era, but the transfer recruitment in terms of talent wasn't that great at first. Picked up this year. Now, an all-conference talent like David Jones. You had Andre Cabot, certainly a big name. And then real strong high school recruitment, A.J. Storr, and now today, Brandon Gardner. Really good recruit, the highest rated recruit of the Mike Anderson era. Certainly, it's a real good sign for this program. It's setting up for potentially a really good class of 2023. A lot of connections really made this happen. Gardner said that he's a close friend with A.J. Storr and really likes St. John's up-tempo style of play. The atmosphere and whatnot really intrigued him to come to St. John's. Certainly, he was in attendance at the Villanova game where Aaron Wheeler cemented himself into legend, 34 points in a loss. But yeah, Gardner's fantastic prospect, as I said, highest rated recruit. Really fits this system in that he likes to play fast. Real good impact player on both sides of the ball, and so has a real good 3-point shooting upside, which, as we know, the last couple of years we've hammered home. That's really what they need. But like I said, going back to before about connections, A.J. Storr's really good friends with, and he's also seemed to build up a little bit of a connection with Christ the King high school member Brandon Williams, who's also been a big recruit that St. John's has seemed to gone after the last couple months and wants to make a priority for this class of 2023. He would be another potentially top 50-esque talent, which a lot of college scouts have said about Gardner. He's certainly a top 100 talent, maybe even top 50. Williams is in that same category as well. So could potentially set up for a really strong recruiting class for St. John's next year. The big part of it all, and what's been the big criticism, is putting it all together on the court.
Yeah, that's the big thing. When you look at what Brandon Gardner brings, 6'8", defensive-minded. He's a Georgia native, and keep in mind also, ladies and gentlemen, too, he turned away the names of these massive colleges: LSU, Auburn, Georgetown, Ole Miss. He turned away all 4 of those to come to St. John's. Now, for those that are wondering why that's a big deal, is because for St. John's, they've been looked at as, historically back in the 80s, this team was an NBA, pretty much a bridge to the NBA. But here now, it's pretty much a laughing stock because, as Mike brought up, they cannot piece things together. We see it year in and year out. And as students, when we both were, Mike still has 1 more year. I've been gone for the last 4 years, but it's been consistently, just atrocity for this St. John's team. So we'll see if they can get it back together and put it all together. That's a big deal. Mike, you brought up, of course, the up-tempo style of play. Associate head coach Van Macon was a big deal with getting all this done, with an assist, of course, to the director of basketball operations, Chris Huey, who was also on the staff of Chris Mullen, as you brought up. And he also, quote, loves the bright lights. That's a big deal as well. The number 73 overall prospect in the class of 2023, the number 14th best power forward, and the number 1 overall player in the great state of North Carolina per 24/7 Sports. It's a big deal for this St. John's program come 2023. Well, let us get you some quick other sports updates here, sticking with the NCAA and sticking over with St. John's. Julian Champagnie, as Mike brought up, signs with the Philadelphia 76ers on a 2-way deal after going undrafted in the 2022 NBA draft. Aaron Wheeler also went undrafted. He signs with the Miami Heat Summer League team and also going over the river to Seton Hall. Jared Rhoden signs with the Sacramento Kings Summer League team. So we do expect those two, to be crossing paths at some point one or another. Let's keep rolling here with our sports update too. Mark Appel, the 2013 number 1 overall pick for the Houston Astros, was called up by the Philadelphia Phillies for the first time that he was called up in 9 seasons. And of course, the significance of the Mark Appel story, number 1 overall pick for the Astros in 2013. Back in 2015, Mike, he was traded to Philadelphia in that Ken Giles deal. Began 2016 at the Lehigh Valley Iron Pigs, which is the AAA home of the Phillies. He had a bone spur in his right elbow. He was designated for assignment back in 2017. He stepped away from baseball. Things got very hectic in terms of his mental mind. In 2021, he attempted a comeback. He was assigned to the Reading Fightin' Phils, which is the AA team. And then, of course, 9 years later, after getting drafted number 1 overall in 2013, Connor Brogdon went on to the COVID IL, and Appel was called up to the majors. Pretty good story there. But we will see. We have yet to see him make an appearance for the Phillies. But we'll have to see what happens in the next couple of days, couple of hours. And of course, when Connor Brogdon comes back, once he's healthy, will Appel have a spot or will he be sent down? But eventually, after a while, 2013 number 1 overall draft pick, thinking that he's a bust, thinking whatever it is, he may still be that, but who knows? We'll see how he can potentially redeem himself, whether it be in 1 start or 1 appearance, whatever it may be. Keeping it rolling here. Mike, did you hear about the Angels and the Mariners contest yesterday?
Oh my.
Jesse Winker, Andrew Wantz. Oh my goodness.
Unbelievable that situation. My God, that was, as soon as I saw the clips from that brawl, just because we're all big Yankee fans, I told my brother, go look up the Yankees Orioles 97 brawl, because it looked very much like that. They're pushing each other into the dugout. The gates on the dugout looked like they were going to come off the hinges for a second. They're all shoving each other into the dugout at once. Just a wild fight.
It was really, really crazy. And of course, actually a legitimate sports update here. Breaking news here. Speaking of that, the suspensions from that brawl had just come out. And we were going to go over 2 hours here. That's where we are now. So we do apologize for all of those that are here and trying to wait for us to get the heck off, but that will not happen just yet. So, per Major League Baseball, a combined 12 members of the Los Angeles Angels and Seattle Mariners have all received discipline, including undisclosed fines, for their role in the benches clearing on-field incident that occurred in the top of the 2nd inning of Sunday's game in Anaheim. Are we ready for this? Angels manager Phil Nevin, drum roll please, has received a 10-game suspension for intentional throwing by pitcher Andrew Wantz, while warnings were in place already. And then Jesse Winker, the Mariners outfielder, has received a 7-game suspension for actions that caused the incident and for fighting. Now this one, Mike, is the best one. Angels third baseman Anthony Rendon, who, mind you, is on the season-ending injured list, has received a 5-game suspension for his actions during the incident and for leaving the dugout while on the injured list. His suspension will be served when he returns from the injured list, which will be in 2023. And in addition to the suspension, Rendon is prohibited from sitting on the bench for the next 7 Angels games. Oh, we are far from done. Angels assistant pitching coach Dom Chitty has received a 5-game suspension for his actions. Mariners shortstop J.P. Crawford has received a 5-game suspension. Andrew Wantz has received a 3-game suspension for his intentional throwing at Jesse Winker while warnings were in place. He's not appealing it, and his suspension will begin tonight. Angels pitcher Ryan Tepera has received a 3-game suspension. Raisel Iglesias has received a 2-game suspension, not for the sunflower seeds being thrown onto the field. Mariners outfielder Julio Rodriguez has received a 2-game suspension. Angels bench coach Ray Montgomery has received a 2-game suspension. And this, it gets better. Angels Major League interpreter Manny Del Campo has received a 2-game suspension. And the catching coach in Bill Hasselman has received a 1-game suspension. Have you ever seen a list that large?
Unbelievable. Never have heard of that. It's just crazy stuff followed up by a crazy fight. That's like a grocery list.
You ain't kidding. Now, speaking of grocery list, did you hear, Mike, even though, again, we're running short on time, this story has to be told here. Jesse Winker got drilled by Andrew Wantz. Now, after everything had gone on in the 6th inning when Jesse Winker was thrown out of the ballgame, there was a fan that sent him a pizza.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know if you heard this story.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. There was a fan that sent him a pizza. A woman named Abigail from Arkansas had sent him a Mountain Mike's pizza. Now, the driver, who had no idea what he was doing, drove in towards the gate, eventually got the pizza to Jesse Winker. Now, the reason why we bring this up is because of all things to happen, a player receiving a pizza, but then getting national media coverage for it. Who would think? It's not even a great story. It's not even a great story, but the greatest part was that Jesse Winker got the pizza, said thank you for it, and sent the woman Abigail a whole bunch of memorabilia. That is the best. That is the better part of the story.
Yeah, I think that's cool. And I think also on social media, I think Abigail had also shouted out the driver, and everybody was starting to give him donations too. So he got the biggest tip of his life. So unbelievable story. I guess he got rewarded for fighting, but he needed to eat something, I guess, while he was sitting in the locker room the rest of the game.
And he did say he liked Mountain Mike's pizza. So, and that's a big deal out in the LA area. I know Mountain Mike's pizza. I've had that. And obviously when you're from New York, nothing tastes as good, but it was okay. It was just something that had to be tasted while we were out there. That is our show, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get to our kudos. Mike Szabo, let's get to you for your kudos.
I will get it. I will make it short, Joey. I don't have that many kudos today. No kudos. We're taking the week off from kudos. Nothing to congratulate this week. Yeah.
That's fantastic. My kudos will go to all of the Hockey Hall of Fame inductees for the 2022 year. The Sedin twins that they played before Mike was born, Henrik and Daniel Sedin, Daniel Alfredson as well, Roberto Luongo, Rika Salonen, as well as Herb Carnegie, one of the builders, have been selected to be enshrined into the into the Hockey Hall of Fame in Toronto come November. So pretty cool stuff there. As of course, my childhood has come to an end when you see the Sedin twins, who I grew up watching every single night. They hung up the skates a couple of years back. Their numbers were retired, 22 and 33. Back in the early 2000s, they were selected number 2 and 3, hence why 22 and 33 were on their backs. And obviously, Mike, you got a learning lesson from that early on with Ian Schraier. I will give him actually credit for that. I can't take full credit, but that was pretty cool there. So yeah, ladies and gentlemen, let us bring you some news for tomorrow. The Essential Wrestling Podcast, presented by Pro Wrestling Pick'em, will come your way tomorrow night beginning at 5 p.m. Eastern Time right here on the Eastern Observer. Join our guys, Al Carl, Ryan Joy, John DeConi, John Smith, and Gary Miheffi for all of the latest news in the world of wrestling. Of course, just announced about 30 days away or so, the WWE SummerSlam coming live from Nashville. Essential Wrestling Podcast will be previewing that SummerSlam edition, presented to you by, of course, Pro Wrestling Pick'em, Saturday, July 30th, right here on the Eastern Observer at 2 p.m. Also, ladies and gentlemen, please be sure to subscribe to our show, the Primetime Rundown, by searching the name of our show. If you're listening to us on the audio platforms, cannot thank you enough. Please give us a subscribe by hitting the subscribe button on wherever you may be listening to. And of course, if you're watching on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button as well. Thank you for doing so. And if you would be more than kind to be hitting that subscribe button on the audio platforms, Odyssey, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcast, and Google Play, that will be much appreciated. And of course, we have to give a quick shout out to Al Carl and Mike Szabo, who won the bracket challenge. And this is Al's graphic there. Both myself, Tyler Adele, and of course, Andrew Macaria, we had a pretty bad bracket challenge. It was not ideal, and Al and Mike, they did pretty good. And of course, Al has to continue to stick it to us. The Essential Wrestling Podcast against the Primetime Rundown. Things have not been going well. John DeConi, of course, won the football pick'em pool, and Al Carl now wins the Stanley Cup bracket challenge. So congratulations to a little bit of a tie there. I think Mike should have been over there. I'll have to let him know that was a little wrong there to not include Mike there. But ladies and gentlemen, the next couple of weeks also, we will be here on Tuesday. The reason why? July 4th is next Monday night. So for the next couple of weeks, be sure to keep a lookout on social media. On Tuesday night, July 5th, and July 12th, we will be here on Tuesday night. For Mike Szabo, Ian Schraier on extended assignment, I'm Joey Jarzynka. For all of us here at the Eastern Observer and the Primetime Rundown and the Blackjack Media Group, we will see you all next Tuesday night for episode number 90.